Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the 140th Annual Council meeting via Zoom. And I guess we have regrets from Lucien LeBlanc tonight. I'd like to have an approval of the agenda, any additions or whatever.
Mr. Chair, just the addition of update under business arising regarding the, I'll call it tax deferral program. It's not called that, but that's what I called it initially. So that's just an update from the province on their plans to support COVID and municipalities.
Very good. We'll put it under 5B, I guess, for tax deferral. Any other additions? If not, a motion will be in order to accept the agenda. Moved by Cathy, seconded by Councillor Digdon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carried. Yes, I will have a raise of hands. Thank you. I kind of slipped on that one. Any conflict of interest declaration by you? Not seeing any. We'll proceed to the next one, which is presentation, and there's no presentation tonight. The adoption of the minutes. Regular council meeting of April the 4th, 2020. Anybody care to move that?
So move.
So move.
Move.
So move. Whoever.
Moved and seconded. Lori, did you get that? Are you okay with that?
Yes.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Or raise your right hand, sorry. And contrary-minded, left hand. Motion carried. So we'll go to business arising from the minutes. And on 5A, we have the YMCA. I believe, Alain, would prefer if you would take that on, if you wouldn't mind. We've had some letters come in and notifications. I guess you could fill us in where we're at.
Sure. And I also added some very extremely late information, which is, fairly unusual on our part, but at the same time, I wanted for you to have it. I guess the first part of this is I wouldn't recommend a decision on this today. So I'll start with that. You have received multiple pieces of information and only now received a document that I've prepared, and I still consider it draft mode. So basically, just to give a summary, we've received a request from the YMCA regarding a proposal to partner with them with the purpose to fund and support their operations over a longer term. The proposal suggests a scenario where the municipalities would share in the ownership of the YMCA in its current location. They've done a conditions assessment of the current facility, and while there are some issues that would require immediate attention, which is not surprising considering the age of the facility, the response of that work was that it would take about 1.5 million to seek immediate responses or immediate needs, and probably closer to 5.3 if you're going to consider an investment that refreshes and restates the YMCA facility in its current location for 10 years. So that's a real high-level summary of the condition assessment report. Obviously, you've received the report and you haven't received it that long ago, so some of you may not have gone page by page, but that's the highlight. There is a third option, which is a 20-year plus solution, which would cost closer to 8.4 million to do. Obviously, the longer you want a facility refreshed to last, the more you have to spend in order to do that. So the board of the YMCA has had a conversation about those numbers, and I haven't received an official response from them regarding that, but they're not really focusing on 20 years at that current location. They're focusing on short to medium term in that location. So just so that you're aware, the condition assessment says 20 plus years, but that's not necessarily what the board will be seeking to do. The board of the YMCA, that is. So I can share with you that since we've received this partnership proposal, I've had discussions with the CEO, interim CEO of the Y, and he's indicated that this was one of the many options that might be available to municipalities to assist the Y. And really what their intention is to create a sustainable, longer term situation rather than, you know, for lack of a better way of describing it, begging and pleading 3 municipal units every 12 months. So their financial situation has obviously been impacted quite negatively with the coronavirus and the closures. They are currently closed at this time, not because of financial, but because they have to be, because of the virus and the environment we're in today. The YMCA is, as you know, a charitable organization. So under the MGA, we are able to assist them. You know that because we do assist them every year. And we can assist them either through grants or through a larger scenario, which might include ownership. So really, just to get to the point where we can start talking about what we need in order to make a decision, the municipality or the council here really should ponder whether the service delivered by the YMCA is important to the residents, to our residents, and whether that service should continue in the opinion of this council. So that's the, you know, the political question that needs to be asked. Clearly, we have 2 other partners, which is the municipality and the town of Yarmouth. On the request, they've received the same request. So certainly, we have heard from the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, and their decision, I don't have the motion exactly worded, but their decision was not to enter into a partnership agreement with the YMCA. What that means for their current level of funding and whether they're interested in continuing that, I don't know that. And I know that the town has had discussions about it, but they haven't landed on any sort of strategy. Probably, you know, in light of, you know, the municipality of Yarmouth making their decision, that we have to consider that as the remaining 2 that still haven't made a decision. Like, how does that decision impact ours? So we really have a variety of things that we could consider. What we know is that the expansion of the Mariner Center is unlikely to occur anytime soon, and we don't have any funding to support that at this time. And so, and what we know is even if we do a Mariner Center expansion, it would have to be in an amount that was affordable to ourselves, our partners, and to federal provincial government. So the council can accept the proposal as is, consider ownership of its asset, of the asset in the current condition. It can do that. It has the ability to do that. It would not be my recommendation, but it certainly is an option for you. You could propose a modified funding solution to the YMCA, one that perhaps gives them more clarity about how many years you're willing to contribute and under what conditions that you would do that. That is also in your ability to do. And of course, I would do that in collaboration with at least the town, because if you're the only municipality interested in a partnership, then that makes it extremely problematic. And of course, you always have the option to reject any partnership agreement, and that is also in your ability to do. So right now, what I would say is I would not recommend a decision tonight. I would recommend that you have a conversation in the public forum tonight. And I would also not recommend an ownership position at this point. It's you know, in our mind, perhaps a bridge too far. We know what the condition of the building is. We know it's maybe not end of life, but close to end of life. If we take ownership of the old, what does that mean in terms of new aquatic center if that project is to occur. So at this point, I would not recommend an ownership position from the municipality. That decision may change in the future, but I certainly would not take that position now. And which leaves you the alternative of negotiating alternate support or rejecting. Either way, I think that that this important topic should be discussed here politically, and also with your colleagues and with engagement with the taxpayer.
Right on, Alain. Thank you for that info. I guess to keep things as simple as we can, raise your hand if you'd like to ask questions or comment. Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. I was just looking over the 5-year deal last evening, and and I used the figure 29%, and you know where we've came up with the 29% as far as on the airport deal. We'd be looking, I believe, in the vicinity of $150,000 per year, and that would be our share going in. Right now, and I still under the same thoughts, is I think we better tread lightly on a lot of this stuff and make decisions that we really have to keep the municipality going at this time, and without looking at a big tax increase for the people, because this COVID-19 is, I hate to say it, but I believe it's far from over, and we know we're going to have some repercussions coming from it. And we don't know yet how much it's actually going to cost us when it's all said and done. So that's my take on it anyway. I'm not doubting it's not, it's a great service and everything for the people. But at the same time, right now, we just have to watch our funds and where we're using them. That's my take. Thank you.
Any other comments or? Yes, Councillor Albright.
I'm just wondering, CAO, if you could, for especially the public who are watching, just kind of outline the difference in where we were financially with the YMCA when we first started and what the ask is now and the difference, because it's quite significant. And I think that people should know that, especially considering, as Councillor Digdon just said, the times that we're in. So if you could just mention that for us, if you don't mind.
It's my pleasure. And I'm just, as I'm answering, I'm also opening the budget, because what I will do is give you some context on, okay, well, this number is this number, but what does it compare to? Okay. So I can start by saying that we were in or around the 10,000 range for many, many years, and then moved to 15,000 probably 3 to 4 years ago. Last year, there was an emergency request that we approved, that council approved, that increased the amount from 15,000 to 45,000. So what it was, basically, it was the ask, and which we approved, was the original 15 plus a $15,000 one-time emergency request, plus they wanted us to double the contribution. So they wanted us to go from 15 to 30, and then they wanted an extra 15 to deal with past, I won't say past operating losses, but it is essentially what it is. So it went from 15 to 45 in 2 years, and so they're asking for the same amount this year. But that 45 that they're asking for does not include what it would cost over and above to do the condition assessment work that Councillor Digdon is referring to. So the numbers that I threw out around the 1.5 and the 5.8 amortized over a significant amount of years, that 45 isn't going to come near that. That 45 is simply for operations. So there has been a considerable increase recently. The town had also approved their portion of that increase. The municipality of Yarmouth had not. So they retained essentially the same funding. They increased it slightly. So That's that. And so I'll give you some context. So the recreation and active living services, so our entire recreation department, typically runs a budget of about $330,000 to $350,000. So that's everything, right? That's active living, day camps. That's an all-in number. So that gives you an idea of the proportion of funding that goes to A versus B. The Mariner Center started at $33,000 at the beginning of our agreement. They quickly ran out of accumulated surplus. So each of the three partnering units' contribution went up significantly. Ours went, I think it went 33, 50, 65, 71, 85. Now it's at 113. So $113,000 is the expected contribution to the Mariner Center this year. Now, this year would be an unusual year. Some of that is to pay for COVID-related costs that they cannot, like there's lost revenue, right? Because they're not open. And they have made some staffing layoffs recently, but still there's no revenue and no understanding of when those revenues will be restored. So 115 is an unusual year. It would be typically in the $70,000 to $80,000 range. So I realize that's more information than you asked, but I like to give context to what are the services that we're providing from a recreation standpoint.
No, that's what I wanted. I wanted people to know because we've jumped high fast, and I'm just not sure where would that money come from? I don't know where that money would come from. And we're struggling now a bit to kind of figure out what we're going to do in these times. I just don't know if this is the right time. And it's not that I've always been a huge supporter of the YMCA. I'm just starting to wonder, unless we're going to grow a money tree somewhere, we're starting to, things are getting tight.
Thank you, Councillor Albright. Any other comments, questions? I'll just add a couple of quick things. Certainly in my opinion, like our CEO said, certainly don't want to own the premises. It's a huge amount. For the repair for 20 years, like Councillor Digdon said. Where would we land on, let's say if it was just a shared cost, would that, like Councillor Digdon said, 29%, would that be a number, or we'd write our own, or we could write our own amount we'd want, or would it be the 29? How do you see it?
Well, this certainly the 29% is what we use for the airport. There's a lot of different percentages. We don't have an intermunicipal agreement that would define that number. What we've traditionally done with the YMCA is we funded it at approximately the percentage of residents that use it. So, and that number has typically been 20%. So I think our user is probably closer to 22, 23, 25% at this point. But I will say the funding model for the YMCA has zero rhyme or zero reason. Traditionally, the town has been the major funder, and that continues today. We are actually giving more money to the municipality, to the YMCA than the municipality of Yarmouth is giving to the YMCA, even if the ridership is higher for the municipality of Yarmouth. And why is that? Because it's three independent decisions. It's not an intermunicipal agreement, and every municipality has the independent ability to set that particular contribution. As we are not owners, it's a nonprofit organization. So that's the reason. It's not, and I'm not trying to be critical of Modi. They've made an independent decision that does not look at all like any of the funding arrangements that we've made municipally.
One thing that I know that all of us know for sure is that the building is downtown, and I know anybody watching from the town will hear these words. They've heard it often. I mean, let's face it, the facility is downtown. It's in it's in the town of Yarmouth, and who benefits more? You know, they do, but I know they've always heard that argument. And you know, yes, Councillor Warden Muse, please.
There. The Y is closed right now because they had to, because of the pandemic that we're in.
Right.
Can they open, if this passes, and can they open without any more renovations or money spent in that building? Are they allowed to open again the way they were, or did they close prior to the provincial orders that, you know, they had to close? Can they reopen if you know, the way they are, if this passes?
I believe the answer is yes. They closed not because of, as you know, there was an incident where there was a cement block, and then there was another incident where there was a light that fell in the pool. So those, well, at least one of those two issues has been resolved and repaired. I know that they closed the hallway where that concrete incident occurred. I don't know whether they reopened it or not, whether they repaired it or not. So the reason why they closed was for COVID. It wasn't because of because they had to close because of significant repairs. However, now that they have a condition assessment, the board has a fiduciary responsibility, right? So they now know what is wrong with the building, right? So if they can't address the major safety issues around the building, and if those issues result in them not being able to open until they get resolved, then there is a possibility that they will not open until that gets resolved. But I can't answer that question without, really, that's a board decision. They get their advice based on whether or not they can reopen or not. But they have the good news is they know what's wrong. The bad news is they know what's wrong, and you have to address it, right? So they would have to address anything that would otherwise make them negligent if they didn't. And so they'll get their own advice regarding what that looks like. It would not be our responsibility to close it. We don't have any ownership. We don't have any responsibility for that, other than, you know, our current commitment to fund them. And so there would be no liability transmitted to us. That would be a decision of the law.
Yeah, because when you look at the report, there's a lot of things that are number one priority, which should be done right away. Whether these are safety issues or not, I don't know. I know there's things that they're saying it should be done as a number one priority. But if it's not a safety issue, I'm just wondering if that would make a difference whether or not they open or not. If it's a safety issue, then of course I don't think they wouldn't be very wise to open if there's a safety issue there that's not being looked after, and they open, and, you know, without having it repaired. Anyway, I just wondered how, you know, where they stood with that.
Yeah, I'm confident the board will get some form of advice, either from their CEO or from an alternative to area. They, of course, would not want to take the risk that they would get hurt. So if it is a major safety issue, they'd have to address that.
Good, thank you.
There are just to maybe answer you, Danny, I read the report also, and there's a lot of them, number ones, were code issues. So I don't know if you call that a safety issue, but there's a lot of them ones were code issues. Probably a question to Alain is, did they give you a drop dead date that they need an answer?
Yes, they said that they would like to have an answer one way or another from the 3 units by May 5th. That gives us, you know, not a heck of a lot of time, but I don't know that we should be rushing into a decision at this point. I think if we told them, look, we need a couple more days or whatever, I think they'd be okay as long as we're in communication. I think it really is, and, you know, we've taken leadership on a lot of regional issues. I think on this one, it really is incumbent on the town to decide, you know, what they need or want in that situation. The Y has presented a lot of positive services, particularly for children at risk. And so certainly would be the town to, I think personally, to lead this one and to have a discussion, and for us to be a part of that and to understand, what is it that we can do in this environment, right? And be honest about what we can do. Yeah, and the reason why they gave a deadline is because if the answer is no, then the YMCA has to have some time to contemplate their options. The other deadline that they have imposed on themselves is that they have an interim CEO in there that his contract, or if you want to call it a contract, expires at the 5th of June, I believe. So if the answer was no, he wanted to have enough time to organize alternative courses of action. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the leadership to do that.
Thank you, Alain. Any other questions, comments? Okay, if not, we may. I haven't read the report that you sent, Alain, but I'll certainly be reading it next couple of days. Certainly, be interesting to see that. Okay, then we'll move on, and we'll hold that off till maybe another meeting before the 5th, I'm sure, on the YMCA. Next item, Alain, I'd like you to the tax deferral, if you wouldn't mind.
Right. So the province of Nova Scotia has made an announcement today. There's a press release and the link to that you have received, but you've received it only today. The province has gone out and borrowed or arranged to borrow on our behalf of all municipalities, an amount amounting to $380 million. At an interest rate of 1.1%, they're able to secure. So that's a very low interest rate, an interest rate that we could never do on our own. And so the purpose of the province going out and doing that on behalf of all municipalities was one of the reasons, to get a low interest rate. The issue we're trying to solve is we're expecting that because of the shutdown of many businesses, either by force through a state of emergency or just simply because they had to close because there was no activity, or situations where individuals are no longer working and are on CERB or some sort of EI, may need more time to pay their taxes. So as you know, our taxes are generally due at the end of June of each year. We have already decreased the interest rate on that from 16 to 10%. And I can tell you, I can confirm that other municipalities have done the same or a form of that. HRM went from 15 to 10, for instance. And so those things are happening. What this loan is doing, initially we asked for the province to lead a deferral program. And what a deferral program would be was that a taxpayer that was eligible wouldn't have to pay a dime for 6 months and then would get on a payment plan for 24 at a very low interest rate. So I'm splitting hairs a bit here, but it's no longer called a deferral program because that word, we cannot legally do it, okay? So the province said, look, we'll secure the money, but we're not going to allow you to defer taxes because you don't have the ability to do so in the act. And they believe that they didn't have the ability to say that we could, okay? The minister obviously has certain powers. The minister can have an order and can compel municipalities to do things. In this circumstance, they didn't believe they could do that. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with, okay, well, it leaves the municipalities to solve that problem. So we have a small group of people that have been involved with creating a model policy. It's basically finished in record time. And what it allows is for a payment plan to occur that looks very similar to a no payment for 6 months, but it would be a nominal payment for 6 months, okay? Because we can't make that zero. It's against the law to do that. But what we can do is do a payment arrangement. So what will happen is very quickly, a policy will be brought to all municipalities. Each municipality will have the ability to slightly alter the policy in order to accommodate whatever local variations you might have. But what the policy basically says is if you've been impacted by COVID negatively, if you've closed your business, if you're tourism, if you're this, if you're that, there's a bunch of eligibility criteria. If you fall in that criteria, you then qualify to be in this plan, which would be financed by this money that the province has announced. So how it works, we borrow at 1.1, we lend that, we pass on a cost of borrowing to those that are eligible. So that may sound a little, oh, well, we're passing it down. Well, we're passing down a cost of maybe 1.4%. If we did nothing, we'd be passing down a cost of 16% or 10%, depending on whatever interest rate we landed on. So it is a better, it's a better deal than nothing. The fact that the province secured that amount of money is impressive. It represents about 35% of our tax levy across the province. Our portion of that would be in or around the $2 million mark. What council will be asked to do when the time is right, which will be soon, is to generate what's called a TBR. It's a borrowing resolution. And so the borrowing resolution will request the money. And if you qualify, which you will, you'll receive that money very quickly. And so the money will come to us. So we wouldn't have to worry about people that can't pay their taxes right away. That amount of money will protect us. And then we'll set up the plan to have a repayment for those businesses and individuals that would fall in the eligibility criteria. So it took me long to explain, but I assure you it was quicker than how the NSFM did. How the NSFM explained it at their meeting today. Right, Danny? Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I've been involved in the process, and I'm happy to answer the ones that I can answer. It's not exactly what we asked for. You know, I guess you can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need. I don't know, somebody said that, I can't remember who, but so that's where we're at.
Oh, thank you, Shea Muse. Anybody have any comments or, yes, Calvin? Yes, Councillor Dartmouth?
Yeah, a question for Alain. So how is the province expecting us to pay them back, or how is that all going to work?
Right. So we would have, so first of all, we'd have to front the interest for at least 6 months because we wouldn't have any offsetting payments. So there's 6 months, there would be a very small payment, like $25 a month or something. I'm not sure exactly the amount, but it's very small. So for 6 months, we get nothing, right? We borrow the money and we bear the interest of that loan for that 6 month period. After 6 months expires, we would be setting up a payment plan with the taxpayer. So the taxpayer would pay us back with interest. And so that's how we would pay it back. So, so they're passing on to us cheap debt, and we are passing the inexpensive interest onto those taxpayers. And it will be higher than the 1.1. There's admin fee considerations. There's other cost considerations. So even if we borrowed at 1.1%, there's probably a 25-cent basis point that would have to be applied. So it would be what, 1.35 maybe, or 1.4, depending on, that will be your decision as council once this all unfolds. But the recommendation will be in or around that amount. So they get the advantage of the cheap debt as well. And we make sure that we are able to pay the interest for those first 6 months that we're not getting payments for, plus the amount of money that we will be recovering over time to cover admin and other costs and the interest cost of borrowing.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, Warden Muse, next.
This plan here will be anybody who doesn't qualify will qualification would be that they're affected because of the COVID-19. I do believe that's the only that. So anybody else that is not affected, but maybe have a bit of a hard time, not just now, but always have, cannot fall under this program though. We can't pick and choose just whoever we want. It would have to be people that are affected because of COVID-19. It's not just that anybody can fall into this program.
That would be correct. There's also the fact that if they're in arrears now, they will not be eligible. So the taxes have to be current. It does not apply to prior year taxes. There's a lot of eligibility criteria that have been established. Some of them are flexible to you when you receive the draft policy. You can say, well, I'd rather this or rather that. But it's very important not to go too far away from that policy, because we don't want 49 solutions to the problem, right? It does allow some flexibility around who would be eligible. There are some businesses that have not qualified for COVID funding for whatever reason, right? So there are businesses and individuals that fall in the cracks when there's an eligibility criteria. Sometimes they're not eligible. So we recognize that. We also recognize we can't build this for everyone. So it would be important to when the policy comes to us, to understand what it means and to stick to that once we're comfortable with it. You know, I can assure you that some of the best administrators have been working on this, and it wasn't me. It's not self-congratulatory work. There's other very, very good administrators across the province that have had a tremendous influence on how this is being developed. So we're hopeful that it's going to work well for our individuals and businesses. But you're right, there are people that won't qualify, and they shouldn't. If they haven't been impacted by this COVID, then they should pay their taxes.
Okay, Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, just a quick question. How long before you see this application unfolding? Are we talking a month or two, or any idea when we'll be making a decision?
I think the policy and the borrowing resolutions will be weeks, not months, and could possibly be days, not weeks. The actual program rolling out for application to taxpayers, that will take a little longer, but I wouldn't say months. I mean, I'm still in the weeks. They are, as we speak, creating a potential online portal that would accept applications centrally. So this work is ongoing, and it will move rather quickly. There will be an administrative burden on every municipality because we will have to determine the eligibility of our applicants. So it will be more administrative work for us. There's no question. And so we'll have to be prepared for that. And the AMA has already been told this, like it's going to be an admin kind of nightmare. You think of HRM with hundreds of thousands of tax bills that get issued. You know, we have a 10,000, but we don't have this. You know, everything's proportional. Like we may need some support from other staff members in order to make this work.
And one follow-up, I don't suspect we'll have be allowed to have the information from federal and provincial governments on who is qualified for what to help us down this journey, to find out who actually does qualify. Right.
I don't think we're going to have access to that for privacy reasons. I'm not sure they're going to be partnering with us on that. However, the eligibility criteria would put the onus on the applicant. So if the applicant received COVID support, they would just have to prove that they did. And so you know, it might be a letter saying you're approved. I don't know what that looks like. But let's just go down the road of make-believe. They have an ROE that says that they've been, you know, laid off because of COVID, or they have some form of documentation that supports that they were impacted by COVID. At that point, we would accept that documentation. At least that's how it stands today.
Very good. Any other questions? Yes, Warden Hughes.
Yeah, just want a question, like Councillor Donson asked about months or whatever. The 6 months for the people that qualify start from the date of the due date for our taxes, right? July 31st. Does
Correct.
that mean that we have to wait until then to get the money, or do we
No.
get the money prior to?
We can get the money prior to that. Obviously, you don't want to go too early because the interest clock starts. You don't want to go too late. So there's a bit of an art more than a science there. But as close, I think we should consider borrowing sooner rather than later. By the time we get around to everything, it'll be in May. And May and end of July is not that far away. I think the borrowing is likely to happen in May or June. And so, and we would borrow before the due deadline. And you're quite right. The 6 months would start at the end of July. So everybody can wait until the end of July, and it's no cost to them anyway, because that's the deadline. So you add 6 months from July 31st, they get an additional amount where they pay virtually nothing.
Right.
So the idea is, and look, this isn't a perfect, we're dealing with imperfection here. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty. So the program has its imperfections, but its intention is to give us the time we need, right? And give the taxpayers the time they need in order to catch up to a situation. There are some businesses and residents that will not find this particularly helpful, that it's delaying the inevitable in some instances. And you know, we may have those situations where we have to try to understand individuals' circumstances, but the policy is really seeking to support those that have been directly impacted by COVID, as I've mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'll just add maybe then a couple of things. Let's not forget, I know we've been talking a bit about the burden on the municipality and on the burden on the staff, but don't forget there's a burden on businesses out there. There's a huge burden out there, and people are having a hard time. Again, I was talking to somebody today, and you know, they're teetering on what they're going to do. They're closed, and you know, you can't open, and money's getting short. You got loans to pay. So anything that can be, that we as a municipality can do to help these businesses. Yes, I know it's a burden. I know it's going to be a lot of work, but by God, we're doing it for good reason, and that's to help those, you know, that are definitely in need, and hopefully not too many go through the cracks. That's my 10 cents worth. Anyhow, we can move on to the next item if there's nothing else, and it's appointment of the auditors. There's one attachment. And let me get to that now. Hold on. Okay, we're looking for auditors for the municipality for the coming year. Shall approve auditors for the fiscal period of April the 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. Anybody have any comments or wish to make to move that? Raise your right hand. Moved by Councillor Albright, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any further comments? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Contrary minded, raise your left. Motion carried. Next item is the appointment of the solicitors. Let me get to that. Okay, for the coming fiscal year, we need solicitors, I should say, April the 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. Anybody want to propose? Proposed by Councillor Dartamo, seconded by Councillor Book. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Contrary minded, left hand. Motion carried. Next item. Appointment of officers. And the following is a list of officers which should be reviewed by council. There's the fire wards, REMO coordinator, REMO assistant coordinator, building official, development officer, bylaw enforcement officers, fire inspectors, and dog control. Anybody wishing to make the motion? Moved by Kathy,
May
seconded by Junior.
I add
Any
something?
questions on that? Go ahead,
May I add
Deputy Ward
something?
Muse.
I think we should be listing, we're saying we're moving, but nobody knows what we're moving. Like, shouldn't we say who the names are here? Should the public know?
Sure.
I'm just asking.
Oh,
Because
it's
all
a,
we're doing, you listed a bunch of positions, but we're moving what? We're I think it's only right that we mention that. Same as what, did we mention who the solicitors were? I didn't hear that. Did we mention who the auditors were? We moved the motion, but I don't think the motion wasn't really read, is all I'm saying. I'm just asking.
it's a great question. I agree with you on the appointment of the officers. Did I name who the solicitors and the auditors were? I did not. Where the motion was passed, we had all read it. If I just named them, would that pass at the moment?
Yes,
Alain? Okay, thank you, Alain.
it would be
Sorry
fine.
about that, Danny, you're totally right on that one. The auditors, Grant Thornton. Solicitors, trying to figure out what the name is here. I've seen that name somewhere before. Let me see if I can guess it. Oh yes, Dr. Moboudreau, that's it. Just teasing, Real. And yes, Danny, I'll name for the fire wards. Okay, we're list of officers. Fire wards would be the chiefs, deputy chiefs for all 9 fire departments of the municipality or serving the municipality or through mutual aid. REMO coordinator would be Janine Muse. REMO assistant coordinator, Max Stolberger. Building official, John Sullivan. Development officer, John Sullivan. Bylaw enforcement officer is Hans, is it Field?
File.
File. Thank you very much for that, Alain. The other enforcement officer is Louis Boudreau. Fire inspector is Dave Andrews, and the dog control SPCA, Nova Scotia. I would entertain a proposed motion to accept those that have just been named for office. Moved by Kathy, seconded by Junior.
I have a question if I could, please.
Sure, go ahead, Glenn.
Thank you. Just wondering, our bylaw enforcement officers, do they actually have power as far as writing tickets or warnings or stuff like that as a bylaw enforcement officer?
They do. They have multiple options at their disposal. Some of them are difficult and some of them are less difficult. First of all, most of the fines that we would issue as enforcement would be under long form because some of our bylaws have to be completely registered and accepted by the Department of Justice. So we have a situation where not all of those bylaws are actually registered with DOJ. As a consequence, we can still penalize, but we're down an option on some of those. We don't traditionally we have not traditionally fined for bylaw infractions around noise and dangerous unsightly and other similar bylaws. We have, through our affiliate companies, done fines for dog bylaw infractions, which is handled by the SPCA, as well as illegal dumping infractions that is typically handled by Richie Nickerson of WasteCheck. We are currently seeking final registration with the rest of the bylaws with DOJ. It is a long process.
But we are working on it.
It is underway, absolutely. It's being led right now as we speak. It's being led by Hans alongside. He's obtaining advice when he requires it in order to finish.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to clarify, it's not that we can't issue fines today. It's that there are multiple ways upon which we can issue fines, and those bylaws that are not registered in the fashion through DOJ, we only have a longer process at our option and not a quick process. It's been a long-standing issue that that's been kind of it's been a long-standing issue for us. So I'm hopeful now that we're close to resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got the proposed motion that council approve the enclosed list of appointments as officers of the municipality of Argyle for the fiscal year 2020-2021. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Negative-minded, left hand. Motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. The next item is membership to the NSFM and FCM. And that council shall approve that the membership to both NSFM and FCM be renewed for 2020 and 2021. Any mover? Moved by Junior, seconded by Richard. And the proposed motion is that council approve its membership to NSFM and FCM for 2020, 2021. Any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Against, left hand. Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is COVID-19 updates. And I would presume, okay, there's nothing there, Alain. Does that mean that if anybody has any comments or discussion about it, yeah, then would that be okay to ask? Councillors, Alain, do you think that's okay? You can put your
yeah, so under COVID updates is the 10A piece. So it's COVID updates, but then 10A draft budget.
Very, very good. Okay, so we'll move right over to the draft budget then. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, if you would like, I can give an update on where we're at around some of the COVID-related municipal operation changes. I'm happy to do that.
Yes, you know what? Sorry for my confusion. Yes, I certainly would like that. And then after we'll ask councillors if they have anything to add on. Go ahead, Alain.
Okay, I'm gonna really blast through this. So obviously, for people who don't know, most of us are working from home. Our offices are close to the public, but not closed. So people are still accessing our services. Between 3 and 5 people each day are arriving in the office, socially distanced, of course, and doing their work in their corner. We have established a, for lack of a better term, COVID hotline. It sounds risque, but it's not. If you have any questions about services that are being that may be available to you, it's a Remo-led initiative, and it's being it's Kim Rowley and Jeanette D'Entremont that are occupying those phone lines, and basically they're navigators, right? They receive the information. They're not necessarily the person that solves the problem. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they find, sometimes they arrange a delivery of groceries to somebody that's trapped in their house or whatever. But most other times it's okay, well, that's a community service issue, or that's a Remo issue, or that's a senior safety issue, and then it gets handed off to wherever it belongs. So There hasn't been a whole lot of uptake on that, but it is that the service is available, and it's provided a great opportunity for Kim and Jeanette to learn a whole other aspect of potential municipal services. It's been very good. As many of you may be aware, but I'll remind you, Kim is designated as the assistant REMO coordinator. Each REMO unit has a designated staff person that assists REMO operations, and for us that would be Kim Rowley. Almost said Rowley. Well, I did now. So I'll hear about that tomorrow. So or maybe later tonight. Anyway, so we'll continue. So so that's going on. The Public Works has created safety measures to protect those that continue to do the essential services of wastewater and water. We still are running municipal operations alongside doing a lot of this planning around COVID. Financially, obviously, the finance department has kicked it in a notch and tried to get you a draft budget, which we'll be talking about now. This is as early as it's ever been. So because we know the earlier you get the information, the earlier you can question it, the earlier we can make changes, the earlier we can improve it. And I think now more than ever, in this time of uncertainty, we need some level of certainty about where we're going to spend our money and how we're going to make changes. So there's been a big adjustment to our services this year. One of which we've mentioned before, and I will mention again today, is the idea of summer day camps. Unfortunately, we cannot provide that service the way that we have done traditionally. We don't know whether the world will open by that period of time. It's actually unlikely that it will. We also have the issue of, well, even if it does, will the schools allow us to use their facilities for that purpose? And that might be a negative as well. So really in dealing with the budget, we realized that we cannot do day camp the way that we've done it in the past. So we are still allowing ourselves some flexibility to understand what can we do in a very short period of time, but there's no way that we would do it in the way that we've done it every year. It's just not possible. We are still committed in hiring summer staff. But that is obviously a place where we will not be hiring as much as we traditionally have. And that's just the truth of it. But we will do our utmost to obtain funding from federal and provincial government to support student positions where we can hire them and where we can hire them to work safely in this environment. So Recreation Department has done great work to consider what else can we do in this environment, right? Recreation is the first place many municipalities go to say, well, okay, well, we got to cut services. And I would suggest that the Recreation Department and the work that they do is very important at this time because of the mental health aspect of our community. What they do around ensuring active living and ensuring, healthy communities and encouraging active living and recreation is absolutely very, very important in this time. So while we can't hire and do as much as we've done before, we are still committed to providing a rec service. So so there's that, and the rest of it I think we can probably address in the draft budget itself, and I'm happy to answer any questions around any other changes of services that we are experiencing here.
Thank you, Alain. Anybody else have any kind of would add on to the COVID-19 in your own community, or would like to add anything on? I'll just make one point that I've heard from a couple of businesses, and it doesn't probably maybe involve the municipality that much, but they're finding that they'll call, let's say they'll call the municipality, call the REN. Where can we go, or how do we find out we can get help? And it's on the website. So what the question is, we know it's on the website. We all know it's on the website, but I think what the problem is the support. And I'm not saying the municipality is there to support. How do you feel? How do you know you qualify? And there was a couple questions of the people I talked to today. And that's where they don't have, I just suggested that they maybe go see their accountant that could help them on that end. But I've certainly gone on the sites, and sometimes it's very, especially if you're not a bookkeeper or in accounting. Oh, do I fit? Do I get the 40,000? You know, there's a 40,000 and you get 30,000, you have to pay back 10,000. Anyhow, there's a lot of things, and what's missing out there that we find is there's not a lot of support. You know, one guy called the Wren, and the guy at the Wren, I'm not going to name the name, but here he is on some kind of a meeting trying to answer the guy about where to go. Oh, yeah, go click this and click that. I mean, that's not support. We all know where to go. But that's just a comment that I've had from a few businesses.
Well, that's an interesting point. I think, and not everybody has a professional accountant that's supporting their operation either. So yes, I think one of the possible solutions would be to reach out to a professional accountant. I know that I think Grant Thornton, I know White Perkins has been out and provided some assistance to say, okay, well, use this tool, and if you use this tool and go through, it will tell you whether you qualify. I think that any business that wanted specific support from a municipal unit or municipal personnel, I think they could reach out to us. The best way to do it is probably set up an appointment. What's happening, what I'm finding with our staff, and I imagine it's the same with the Wren, is there is a lot of meetings, right? Because we can't actually have a lot of dialogue, we can't be in places. But what has happened is the Zoom meeting requests have tripled or quadrupled. And so sometimes what happens is the availability of that person to be fully engaged in that particular question might be compromised. So I would suggest to businesses in the municipality of Argyll, if they seek an assistance, they can reach out and perhaps set up an appointment with, I would say there's 2 or 3 individuals at the municipality that would seek to assist. Obviously, Charlene LeBlanc, our community development officer, would seek to assist and has assisted. And I would do my best to assist where needed as a backup for that. And obviously, we do have sister companies that might be able to assist as well. You know, part of the problem here, and it's not the business's fault, it's not the business owner's fault, is that there's so much changing all the time. So if you're not keeping up, it might take a while for municipal professionals to get up to speed to the ever-changing environment. So I can understand and appreciate a frustration that might be coming out of business owners. I guess I would offer setting up an appointment to do things the way that they need to, and then maybe follow-ups. But we are willing to help.
Thank you, Alain. Thank you for that. Okay, next we'll move on. If there's no other comment, we'll move on to the draft budget, and I guess it's going to be either Marcia or Alain. I'm not positive on this one. Would that be Alain or Marcia, I wonder?
I can certainly start, and Marcia has done a lot of the work, but typically prefers me to speak, or maybe I don't know, it's the other way around. I don't remember, but anyway, I'm sure that both of us will have something to say. So the draft budget, and this is draft, is attached, 14 pages. There's also a spreadsheet attached that projects the financial impacts related to COVID or Corona. And finally, there is a 5-page attachment that is essentially PowerPoint presentation regarding some of the high-level elements of the budget. I probably will start with the 5 pages, which is the PowerPoint. So just give you a moment to open. Are we good?
It should go. Let's see how the others are making out. Got it, Calvin? Good. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go for it.
All right. So the operating revenues and expenditures budgeted this year, they're down 18,000 from prior year. This would be atypical. Typically what would happen is there would be an increase in expenses and as you know, associated revenues. So this is contrary to what we've seen. I mean, however, being a decrease of 18,000, you might as well say it's the same as last year. So the budgeted amount is 8.428 million. We are in this budget assuming a maintaining of commercial and residential tax rates in this budget for both commercial and residential. I'm just going to answer a question that might be asked before it's being asked. You know, why in COVID would we maintain the rates? And the answer is when you decrease a rate, everybody is impacted by that. So those businesses and residents that have not been impacted by COVID benefit from a reduction of the rate. The purpose of what we spoke earlier about, the lending and the reduced interest amounts, that's the place where we're targeting our assistance, right? So if you reduce the rate, everybody gets a benefit. I mean, we know that certain industries actually do better in these times than do worse, and so you're giving them the benefit of that, where it's not really targeting the people that need it. So that's why it's not because we're insensitive for the needs of our residents in our commercial body. It's that it's not, in our mind, an appropriate way to address the problem. The draft budget obviously is impacted by Corona. If you go to the next page, it does explain what the impacts might be or are expected to be. So when we talked about the province lending us money, that was not to deal with revenue losses. That was to deal with a liquidity problem, a cash flow problem. So there's two items that are impacting municipalities, not just us, across the nation. One is every municipality is going to lose money. It's going to lose revenue as a consequence of this. So we are impacted, just like our businesses and our residences are impacted in lower revenues, okay? Now, I'm not going to suggest that our impact of lower revenues is anywhere near the impact of a restaurant or a tourism operator. Those are significantly impacted by Corona. We are in fact impacted, and the impact from a revenue loss perspective would be decrease in what we would call transactional tax amounts, such as deed transfer taxes. So deed transfer taxes are generated through activity when people purchase either vacant land or a house or whatever. There's a 1% deed transfer tax implemented in Argyll, as is the case in many other municipalities. Well, if everybody's staying home and if no activity is occurring, we are expecting a significant loss in that revenue. And we're expecting that loss to be about 80 grand. And that's gone forever. So that won't, it's not a cash flow issue. It is a loss of revenue issue. We expect investment income and interest on arrear taxes to be down, because we'll either be using our own money or decreasing the interest that we would otherwise charge to those that are in arrears in order to help those that need it. So when you help those that need it, that results in a reduction in revenue for us. And we also know that there'll be recreation fee drop of about $37,000 because we simply can't deliver the service. So there's likely more unplanned decreases in revenue, but the total of about $178,000 is reflected in this budget. So that's one of the reasons why the revenue isn't significantly higher than it was last year, is that we simply have a reduction. We do also have an increase in costs relating to COVID. We've already mentioned some of these with our discussion with the YMCA. The Mariner Center funding the request is $35,000 higher than it is expected to be. We have a line item that I call COVID grants to organizations. We don't have a specific purpose for it, but we know there might be requests that we're not expecting. And so I've put that number at 30,000. And that's not for a particular organization necessarily. It is an estimate of a number based on the potential need of organizations out there. That may be enough, it may not be enough. It may be zero. But we felt it was important for us to put in a contingency amount for nonprofit organizations that just simply have had their revenue drop out from under them and have no other alternative than to ask municipalities. We haven't necessarily received those requests yet, but we're anticipating that could happen. Illegal dumping and spring fall cleanup. We know that everybody's at home, and a lot of people, when they're at home, they're doing rebuilds. They're either destroying something or building something. So we expect spring and fall cleanup to be big, and we also expect, because there's been a lack of ability to go to the landfill, that there might be some people that make the terrible decision to dump illegally. And if they make that terrible decision, guess what? We have to pay for that. So the taxpayer pays for that ridiculous decision. And so we're actually anticipating an increase in cleanup as a consequence of people just making that decision out of impatience or frustration or whatever, which look, it's all understandable, but the action of illegal dumping is not understandable in my mind. We also expect an increased cost of borrowing. We just talked about why. We will be borrowing from through MFC from the province. So total cost increases or revenue decreases is expected to be about 290 grand this year. So in response to that, we have to make adjustments because that doesn't grow from the trees. The day camp, senior and recreation activities, we have a net decrease of activity in recreation of $89,000. So that is offsetting the additional, the COVID impact. We're trying to reduce the impact on our numbers. The courthouse reduction of tour expenses and other expenses is an additional 18,000 savings. The virtual elimination of all conferences for counselors, staff, and volunteers is upwards of $43,000. I should note that includes everything. That includes our support for volunteer firemen to the FSANS conference. It's AMA, it's NSFM, it's FCM, it's tax conferences, everything. We did anticipate a small amount to still remain, but again, it's almost zero. Minor reductions in airport corporation and decisions to not do things from a capital perspective that we would have done otherwise. It's an additional 28,000. So we have reduced the corona impact by 178. So it leaves about $90,000, give or take $10,000, $15,000 of money that we have to find, right? So what we're proposing is that would come from our rainy day reserves. As Councillor D'Entremont aptly pointed out, we do have surpluses, and we've had surpluses every year since I've been there, and before me. And so some of them larger than others, and so we always put aside money for a rainy day. And as Councillor D'Entremont said, it's raining. So this is the time to take a look at those reserves and inject some of them into our current year operations, so that to not have to decrease other investments. We've already decreased, as you can see, we decreased quite a few. This budget contemplates a 2020 municipal election. We expect the cost to be 38 grand. Usually that cost is lower because we often have an offset from the Tri-County Regional School Board. So what happens is it typically costs us between $32,000 and $38,000 to run an election, but we usually get a refund from the Tri-County and the CSAP to refund a portion of the election that we run on their behalf. So because there is no Tri-County School Board, there will be no school board election, but there may be a CSAP election. But what we've anticipated is the full cost of election. If we run a CSAP election and get a refund, that number is likely to be reduced, but we're not assuming that at this time. We're also assuming a grant of $15,000 to contribute towards SEMA 2024, which is our World Acadian Congress that will be held in 2024. We are anticipating costs this year. And if they don't happen, then they'll go into reserve and it'll be saved for another year where they will happen. will happen. This is the second and last year of our commitment for funding for the Musée de Pubnico West. That's 13,000. This is the second year of fire department funding. 40,000 is included in this budget. We have included in this budget an addition, and this decision hasn't been made, but we've included the possibility that you will exempt West Pubnico Golf and Country Club from taxes. That is included in these numbers. If you choose to do a partial exemption or no exemption, obviously that would change the budget. But we've assumed a positive answer, not because we're telling you to do that. It's just that we're conservative in our budgeting. So if we think the expense is going to happen potentially, we've added it in. Okay. Remo is part of the Argyle budget, so it makes EMO look way out of whack. But don't be concerned about that, because we're getting 67.5% of that back. So that number went from 30 to 90 or something like that. There will be some additional changes to that number before final, but remember, we're only 32 and change % of that number. We're recovering the rest from our partners.
What line is it on, the recovery?
It would be under, let me just check here. It would be under
because I was looking and I said, holy smoke, what happened to the Remo budget? And I said, my question's going to have to be, where do we recover that from, if we recover? And then you mentioned it.
It's under services provided to other government.
Okay.
Under that line item, what you'll find is there's a sharp increase from last year's actuals.
I saw that.
Has to do with that.
Thank you.
So, and I will point, when I pull up the budget for you, I will show you exactly what that looks like. Okay?
Thank you, Alain.
You're welcome. Solar power revenues. So there are revenues expected this year for the operation of our solar powered revenues in West Pubnico. So they're generating energy for us. So that's a revenue that we didn't have last year, or had very little of it. Very quickly, just the last slide, taxation revenues are up from the prior year, about a net amount of 131,000. That's strictly based on assessment increases. There's no tax rate increase included there. Residential's 103, commercial's up 38, and resource is actually down 10,000. Most of that is due to adjustments in the mink industry that they've been decimated. And as a consequence, there have been some major adjustments to the assessment of their properties. Excuse me. As it is every year, the cost of mandatory contributions are up. For those reminding councillors what that is, and telling those that don't know, is the mandatory contributions are contributions we must make towards services. The four major ones are policing, education, corrections, and housing. So we're responsible for 10% of the housing deficit that incurs at the Tri-County Housing Authority. Every year we get billed for that. We're assuming that will be relatively stable this year, as well as corrections. They'll be relatively stable. Education, it will be up $33,000 for sure, and policing will be up $23,000 for sure. So we expect a 56,000 increase in things that we have absolutely zero control over. I also list the cost of mandatory services. They are also up, most of which have to do with solid waste collection, which we have a new contract, and the contract has increased by 20,000 this year. We expect disposal fees, excluding spring and fall, to be up 11,000 as well. We are expecting stable fire protection and building inspection. When I say stable, there have been some reductions in fire protection costs, but then there's also some increases that will offset that. So we figure that that'll be relatively stable. So again, mandatory services, which is different than mandatory contributions. Mandatory contributions is payments we make to a third party and have no control over. Mandatory services is services we must provide, but it's us that provide it. We are actually delivering that service. So that's the difference between the two. In both cases, I like to show this number because when we talk about taxation increases, we have to actually also think about the increases on the costs we have little control over or must produce. So if you look at our taxation increase is at 131, when we take those contributions off the additional costs, we're really only up 44,000. And that's not a big increase. So we're really operating, lean as we can this year. And the difference is coming from an operating reserve contribution. Right now, we are estimating that the contribution from our reserves to break even will be, just going down to the right page, will be 135,000 that we will need from the reserve in order to break even based on this draft budget. So that was a lot of information. I'll ask for guidance from council around what else that you wish to see today and where do you want this to go either or in future meetings in order for us to ultimately come to a decision. I'm happy to do whatever answer any detailed questions that you may have on the draft that you've received. Of course, Marcia has the answer to some of those questions as well. So I've only focused on the PowerPoint presentation. But any question that you have on any details, we're happy to answer.
Okay, councillors, anything, just raise your hand and I'll. Councillor Donaldson?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I've gone through the budget this afternoon, like Guy does, quick fine detail. And I'm pretty impressed that we're going to be able to hold the tax rate. And yeah, I find it's a really good budget. You've made adjustments where they needed to be made, and I can't see how I could improve on it. So I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Digdon.
I was just gonna back up, I guess, what Councillor Donaldson said. I looked it over. One thing I don't think we should be looking at is reducing taxes. If you look at our taxes around here that we pay compared to some others around, we're pretty good in that shape. And as far as I'm concerned, reducing taxes looks good maybe for this year or whatever, but then somewhere along the line you pay plus for that. So I'm impressed with the budget for the year we're in, and I'm also really impressed with the PowerPoint that he made up. Looks very nice and very easy to follow for somebody that may be following at home and haven't had looked at the budget and that. So thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'll just add one of mine, then I'll go to Councillor Donaldson after. Anywhere on the airport, it seems like a measly 9,000. It's a little, I didn't find it was a whole lot. That's that you don't anticipate. We're into disagreement till the end of this year, end of 2021.
We've got including today, 2 days until it expires.
Right. Very good. Thank you for
a full 2 days, though, like a full 2 days.
A full 2 days. Okay, good. Just wanted to know where we fit with that, Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, we talked about this last year when we was going over the budget. If I remember, if Ellen can clarify, municipality of Argyle ranks on like fifth, like in tax rate and expense to the homeowner and businesses. Like we're very well. I guess it would be down to the bottom of the charts, not at the top of the charts. Like there's only 5 other municipalities in the whole province that you could say was a cheaper place to live, but probably with less services. Do I remember that correctly from last year?
Yes. you can apply the calculation in many different ways. If you take a look at what the median salary is for a family in Argyle, and you look at what they pay for property taxes as individuals, we are the 5th most affordable in Nova Scotia. From a business perspective, I think we're a little bit more expensive than 5th, but not by much. And so our rate, so many people look at the rate and say, well, your rate is higher. That's true, but there's 2 parts of that calculation. One is the rate and the other is the assessment, right? So Chester, for instance, has a very low residential rate, but their assessment is extraordinarily high, right? Because of the value of the homes that they're in. So for us, it's a combination of our rate along with the affordability of purchasing a home in our community that makes it that way. Now, that being said, you get what you pay for, and certain municipalities choose to do other things that perhaps we're not doing. And as a consequence, if we wanted to do those same services, we drop down the list probably, right? So it's been a function of the choices we've made as municipal unit, and the median income of our residents, which we really don't have direct control over. We're thankful for the price of lobster when it's high. And the third part is the assessment of property, which we don't have any direct control over. So,
Okay.
I mean, you're right. I mean, we're one of the most affordable in the province.
Because that's a question you get from time to time from the general public, and it's good to know like how to explain it and point that out. Sometimes people just look at the tax rate, nothing else. But, okay, thank you. I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. That's a great point you made. I once you mentioned it, I remembered, but I wouldn't have remembered otherwise. Yeah, that's a great point. Yes, Warden Muse. I see you have your hand up there. Can you unmute?
Can we unmute Danny?
I guess he doesn't want anything.
I'm sure what he's saying is really important. Oh, there we go.
Couldn't hear you. Okay.
I lost everything. I lost all. I had a blank screen, and I couldn't find mute, unmute, nothing. So this budget here, okay, it's a draft budget. Do you have more work to do on this, or is this
Yes.
something you're looking for us to approve, or what are you looking at this point?
So we have a little bit more work to do. It's going to look very much like what you're seeing. So I guess the first point I'd like to just make is are you okay with our decision to maintain the rate? Because if you're not, then it changes a lot of water on the beans, right? So the first piece is, okay, are we good with that? You don't have to make a decision today on setting the rate, but are we on the right track is really the point I'm trying to deliver. There are some elements of the budget that still need some work. We have 2 area rates that we still haven't established. So without establishing those, the budget is really, it's not quite complete. And those are West and East Pubnico, which is work that we really need to turn our attention to make sure it happens quickly. The other thing is there's a couple of decisions that are later in this agenda that may impact the budget. And of course, the YMCA decision could impact this budget, and other decisions that could impact the budget and how we want to look at it.
Okay.
We're very, very close.
Yes, because it looks good so far to me anyway, but it's just that, like you said, there are other things that could affect it, which could change what we're looking at as well. Okay.
Thank you, Warden Muse. Alain, is there anything that could come down with the COVID? Some stuff from the government that could affect your budget? Because you would need this passed before the end of May, I would think.
Yeah. Oh, well, I would seek to have this passed by early May so that we can make decisions on billing earlier than usual, which means we've got some work to do on the area rate work. That might delay the eventual approval, but hopefully not. We could, in theory, pass an operating budget with an estimated area rate, but we cannot pass the area rate without getting the area rate requests from the community. So the thing about the area rates, when it comes to fire area rates, they're for capital purposes. It's money in and money out. So whatever that number is, it's the same in as out. So say, for instance, that we just couldn't wait anymore, and for whatever reason, we didn't have the area rate for East Pubnico. We could assume the same rate or whatever, the rate that we think they're going to set. If it doesn't happen that way, it's okay. It doesn't have an impact on our operating budget because it's in and out. It's their money, not ours. So, even if we didn't have those rates set, I would be prepared to recommend an approval of the budget, even if that's really not customary. And then we can set those rates after if we had to. We just need those rates to bill. We absolutely need to know those rates before we send out the bills.
Could we do that at our first meeting in May?
I think we can. Yeah.
Whatever the wish of council is. Councillor Donaldson?
I totally agree with that, but is there any harm in announcing the taxation rates for commercial and resource and residential? Is that something that the public could know at this point, and Alain can tweak the budget as needs to be based on that rate?
You could, in theory, pass a motion right now for your commercial, your residential rates. You could do that, and like resource and residential are the same. We're recommending $1.09, no change, and $2.25 for commercial, $2.27 commercial, no change. Used to be $2.25. You make that motion today, and if you did that, then you could make the announcement, no changes, and you just basically instruct staff to work around that decision, which, I mean, we already have in essence, right?
I'm in agreement with that, but I'd like to hear from the rest.
Councillor Digdon?
I think it's a good thing to keep the tax rate as they are, and I'd be willing to put that in the form of a motion. That the current rates remain as follows: residential $1.09 per every 100 of assessment, and the commercial rate $2.27 per every $100 of assessment. At least this way the people knows what's going to happen as far as their taxes for at least next year and that.
Very good, Councillor Digdon. Councillor Brook, did you second that?
Yes, I second that, and that's why I wanted to say that I don't think we should be increasing our tax rates right now. So keep it the way it is. It only makes sense, and I'll second the motion.
Any further questions on that? If not, all those in favor of the keeping the commercial and residential rate at what they are, raise your hand, right hand. Negative minded, left hand. Motion carried. Very good. Okay, I guess that works well, Alain.
Yep. So, so before we move on to the other topic, that was very helpful, by the way, and really appreciate the decisiveness of that motion. The things that will keep us from recommending a budget that we feel represents your interest is how we want to deal with certain scenarios that we might anticipate under COVID. So the things that I would seek to bring back to council for further discussion, I'll leave you with the tidbit of information, and then maybe you can think about it and come back. You know, we've received financial information from fire departments. Typically, we have some fire departments that are really so super good at providing financial information to us in a timely manner. One of which every year is East Pubnico. I just have to say it out loud. Like it's more than East Pubnico. Trust me, there are 3 or 4 of them. But one of the things that was raised in the correspondence was, and it's not on the agenda tonight, but is that some fire departments do fundraising. Actually, most of them do. And so in the situation where COVID is involved, they may not be able to do the same kinds of fundraising that they've done in the past. So for some of the larger fire departments that have a little bit more capacity, that may not be an issue. But for some of the smaller ones, it may be. And so the fire departments only have one avenue other than fundraising for their income, and it's us. So I think what we want to do as a council and as staff is we want to bring to you the attention that there are certain organizations that they have no other resort than to come to municipalities for some form of assistance. And I just think that we need to be prepared for that. And we need to think about what our positioning might be. What would our decisions be in those circumstances? And it might seem like an easy answer, right? Oh, well, they don't do fundraising. They had fundraising, they don't do fundraising, and we should be supporting them that don't do fundraising. But then the next question is, well, what about the fire departments that don't do fundraising? Like, so we're going to support the ones that do fundraising. And so there's complexity associated with those decisions, right? So I don't want to get into the big details, but there are going to be organizations in the municipality of Argyll that will be asking us, potentially as the only resort they have, to offset a loss of revenue that is real, right? Not, these organizations don't have operating reserves, right? We're lucky we have that, right? So we have to think about as a political group, you have to think about as a political group how you will address those particular questions. You may not have them yet, but they may come as the year goes along. Remember, these are volunteers. Some of them are uber right on for financial information, and others, it will take them time to realize where they are financially. So it's those kinds of questions that we'll pose to you in between now and the next meeting, so we can get guidance from you and then anticipate those costs accordingly. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Alain. Thank you very much. Right on. So it's a great point. I know that many of them, it's Roppy Pie sales, it's seafood chowder, it's, you know, bottle drives, it's this and that. And, you know, with this COVID-19, it's certainly has curtailed a lot of that activity, and they do depend on that. Thank you for bringing that up, Alain. Any other questions on that part? If not, we can move on to number 11, COVID-19 decisions. We have under the A, YASTA, tax deferral request, and we have one attachment. Let's have a look at that. Too many mouses to grab here. Don't send the cat after me, Cathy. Don't send your cat. Two mouses, I always grab the wrong one. There it is. Okay, YASTA is one of the partners one of the people we support under the for tourism, an area tourist association, and they're looking at a deferral or for 4 months of for payment of property taxes owed and interest for a 4-month period on tourism establishments. Any further details on that?
Just that we actually can't do what they're asking. We don't have the legislative authority to do what they're asking. But what we do have is what the province announced today, which allows for 6-month delay as opposed to 4. Now they would, I presume the YASTA request is obviously tourism related, which makes sense because they're a tourism organization, and also at no interest, right? So their expectation would be no interest, right? That would be. So I can't recall whether he says that explicitly, but I implicitly believe that to be the case. So we can't do that by law. We can do this system, which will allow 6 months at a very, very, very low interest. So I think the program meets most of this request. So there's no decision to make here as council because we can't do it, but I will, on your behalf, respond accordingly that we cannot do it, but this is what's happening.
Very good, council. Is that okay? see you nodding your heads. Okay, good. I'll ask you to take care of that, then we'll move on from there. Next item on the agenda is blue bag recycling letter, attachment 2 pages. And I can go over that a bit. So what it is, and I'm not sure if I understand that. It says landfill variance. Kind of, could you maybe? I didn't understand what what it means. Variance is a change.
It's the word they're using to describe really what would be a relaxation of rules. So they're asking for a variance on the rules. Variance suggests a temporary change. And it's to ask the Department of Environment to relax their rules about blue bag and recyclables in the landfill. So if it's trying to address a problem that's being anticipated, and the problem that's being anticipated is that those that do blue bag recycling, this is a very labor-intensive work requiring people to separate paper and plastic in a situation where there's a fear of contamination, right, for COVID. So there's an increased anxiety involved with the deliverers of that service. So because of that, it's still business as usual, but what happens if it isn't? What happens if it stops? So by law, we have to recycle that. We can't just throw it out, but we have no way to retain that much recyclable in any building, never mind the big one we have at the landfill. We would be overrun in days. So I mean, they're transfer stations. They're not stay here stations, right? So if we can't move it, we got to find a place to put it. And then of course that means they'll go outside. And once they go outside, they get contaminated themselves and they become garbage. So anyway, the letter that WasteCheck is writing on behalf of many units is, relax the rules in case we need to do this, in case we need to throw them out, right? Like it's, like we've been world leader in a lot of ways in recycling. Like, chill is basically that's what the letter is asking. Like, just give us a little bit of room on this one. So, it has been written on your behalf, and I don't think you have to approve the letter because it's being asked. It's being done on your behalf. I think it's appropriate to endorse it if you agree with that particular course of action, which I of course would recommend that. To endorse the letter that WasteCheck is writing on behalf of the region.
Yes, I think it's a great point in what they're doing there, and like I was saying, if we don't have room to store it, it has to go somewhere. Any other comments, questions? If not, yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Just I guess we're going to make a motion to endorse the letter, so I'll make that motion. Seconded by Councillor Murphy. Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Against, left, motion carried. Okay, for decisions, we'll go to the A, which is a kilometer and transportation allowance. And there's a 2-page attachment. And I guess this is for reimbursement on the kilometers that either staff, councillors do in the run of a year.
Yeah.
I see where it says regular rates. Is that what we're looking to approve? The first line?
Yes, we have correct. We have a policy that says that we use the provincial rates. And every year we have to pass a motion to change the rate to match provincial. So
very good.
Yeah.
So the kilometers driven 0 to 16,000 kilometers, the old rate was 45.85. The new rate is 46.7 cents per kilometer. And kilometers driven 16,001 plus kilometers used to be 40.46. And the new rate will be 41.21 cents per kilometer. And as Alain said, it's effective with the provincial rate. Anybody want to move that or
I will
question?
move that we change our rates to coincide with the provincial rates for mileage.
Moved by Warden Muse, seconder. Seconded by Councillor Bork. Okay, any questions on the motion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Sorry, there's a question, Kathy, yes.
Just to clarify on mileage. Okay, so mileage, like us, when councillors, we go to our meet, we're not paid for mileage, because some people think that we're being paid for mileage to drive into our municipality for certain things. I just want to make it clear that we're not paid mileage for that, only when we go outside of our municipality, right? Is that right?
That's correct. Which
Yeah.
basically has been
Some
zero.
people are saying, oh, everything's being paid. Well, it's not.
No, just and so even the stipends used to include a non-taxable portion for that purpose, and now it's all 100% taxable. So, yeah, no, I mean, and let's face it, your mileage since the new year has been zero because we can't go anywhere. And nobody travels more than 16,000 kilometers. So just so that in case you were wondering. And of course, obviously, that only applies to those that are using their personal vehicles. We do have work vehicles that we use in the instances where there's heavy travel. So we do that assessment. So Public Works uses a lot of mileage, and it's more economical to buy than to have somebody use their vehicle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bork. Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. I'll remind you, left hand. Motion carried. Next item for decision, West Pubnico Golf Club Association, attachment 1 page. And let's just have a look at that. So there's a letter that was sent by the West Pubnico Golf Club Association and the Municipality of Argyle tax exempt properties. As the West Pubnico Golf and Country Club has made changes and have become a registered non-profit society known as West Pubnico Golf Club Association, we request that our property be added to the list of tax exempt properties in the municipality of the District of Argyle. Yours truly, Darrell LeBlanc, President. Any comments? Anything on that? Councillor D'Entremont?
Yeah, I guess we've been probably talking about this for a while, and finally it's become a non-profit society. So are we, I guess just to ask Alain, we can exempt the whole thing or part, or how's that all work for when it comes to non-profit societies?
Okay, so you have your nonprofit societies are eligible for a tax exemption based on the bylaw that you have in play. Every year we look at the list. This would be a new addition, clearly. And you can do partial or full exemption from property taxes. That's entirely up to you as council. I will note that, you know, the timing of the West Pubnico Golf and Country Club asking for tax exemption has nothing to do with COVID. They've been working on this for, geez, I don't know how long. I mean, more recently, they've worked very hard on it the last probably year, and they've spent a lot of time and energy to inform their membership and you know, obviously invested some of their own dollars to legally make it happen. So so I will say that I like to be clear when we have requests in COVID arenas that we want to make sure that people understand this is not a COVID request. This is we're changing our operations, and we'd like for you to support it in some way. That's the request that they have. And you are at complete discretion to say yes or partial or no.
Okay, well, I guess to my point, I know we've been talking about this for a long time, and you know, this is a you know, an organization or an association in our own municipality that people in our municipality use, ages from I don't know how young to in the 80s or more, male and female, and you know they've done this in order to save on taxes. So I can't see why we can't you know, give them the full exemption. So I don't. What is the amount that they usually pay a year? Is it around 22,000 or what is it?
I'm just looking at that now. I believe it's right now they owe 22,000, but that is
Oh,
not,
okay.
that's an arrears amount. I think that the regular taxation. Marsha, do you have that information offhand? We had it here recently. I'm just checking.
I think it's between 18 and 20.
Okay.
I do have that. I can look for it and let you know after, Kelvin.
It's that range for sure. So they used to be, so it would have been a lot more, but part of their golf course, we've always taxed under a recreation. So their original tax bill would have been far greater than that. We've given them a discount because we could consider some of the acreage as recreation acreage. So, I mean, it's still a big bill, but we have given them some tax relief for many years up to this point because of the way we chose to tax some of their property.
Okay.
I'm just saying that because it should give you some history that you have actually assisted the golf course in the past. So there is a precedent, not to say, you know, not to influence your decision, but just to give you facts around that history.
Well, that's my opinion. We'll listen to the rest. Thank you.
Councillor Norton, did you make a motion for that or just?
No, we're still just talking about it.
Very good. Warden Muse.
So if we did that, then that affects our budget line again, right? So this is another thing that we were talking about, what would affect our budget line. This could be one of them. With the nonprofit organizations that we have, they're not all, I know some are not fully exempt, but are they all at least partially exempt? And do we have more that are partially exempt or more that are fully exempt in what we have?
That's a really good question. So I'll give you some history, it's a little bit of information. So most of the nonprofits that we exempt in full. All the community halls are exempt in full. And I'm talking about either commercial or residential rate. I'm not talking about fire rates. Everybody pays a fire rate regardless of whether they're exempt or not. So, the only partial that we have is Nikhil. So the Nikhil partial rate was based on the presumption that the province has at least partial responsibility to pay for the costs of operation of Nikhil. I mean, that the cost of operation of Nikhil are the responsibility of provincial government. So council has made the decision to not fully exempt, but to maintain what the cost of the property taxes were for Nikhil prior to them expanding. So that's been our decision at the council level for that asset. The major other places where they have exemptions, there might be harbor authorities that are exempted and they'd be exempted in full. Things like the courthouse and archives, the archives itself, the village historique, the musée de Thon, all of those are examples of nonprofit organizations that get a full exemption from taxes from you. So there is only one partial exemption, that's Nikhil. And I can't think of any nonprofit organization that doesn't have some form of exemption. We don't have a ton of them that actually own assets to get the exemption, but we've been very generous in that area for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or yes, Councillor Moore.
I think that this golf course, we should give them their exemption to the taxes. I mean, this is a recreation in our municipality. You give it to the others, I don't see why not. It's recreation. Everybody, it's all age group that goes there, so I think it's an asset in our community. So I think we should exempt for their tax. Maybe, I don't know about the arrears that they owe, but maybe just for the new taxes coming in for 2021. I don't know what everybody else feels about that.
Just for the record, we cannot apply a retroactive exemption. So the amount that they owe, if there was a desire for the municipality to do something with that, they'd have to do it a different way. And I would also note that it is unusual to provide a tax exemption when there is arrears of that amount. It's not impossible, but I think we need to address any sort of historical issue. We don't have to do that today, but I think that the question I think that we're asking ourselves today is whether we want to do full or partial, and for how long. Keeping in mind that it is a prospective or a future-oriented decision, not a retroactive decision.
All right.
Councillor Doctorow, did you have? I saw your light came on, or you just spoke?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I thought maybe that Councillor Book was going to make the motion and I was going to second it. But maybe I can make the motion and she can second it. How's that?
That sounds good.
So I'll make the motion that we exempt, and my computer's going, well, just a minute here. I just wanted to make sure I had everything right here. Sorry. Well, you might have to make it, Kathy. Sorry. I lost all my information here.
So I just want to ask Alain again, you just mentioned that, okay, so we're allowed to exempt for the new taxation year, or do we have to address their arrears first?
The only I think we have to address the arrears. We can't address it here today, but what we can do is to do a motion to exempt them for the 2020-2021 taxes, which would be the tax we're about to bill. So we can do that, and from my perspective, we look at that list every year, and so we can review it every year. But I think there's an expectation with all of your exemptions except for one, which is Nikhil, that whatever decision that you make typically is a decision that you would continue to make. So I just, I know I'm being a little cryptic here, but whatever, like, so when we review the list for nonprofit exemptions every year, what we typically look for as staff is not to bring back, well, do you still want to give an exemption to this organization? What we usually do is we take a look at the list and say, which ones are no longer nonprofit, right? So like, let's say, the West Pubnico Athletic Association owned an asset and we gave them an exemption because they were a nonprofit and they sold a property to a profit-oriented person. Well, then we would take that off the list. The staff would not look at that list and say, well, we don't think the West Pubnico should get that exemption anymore. Unless, of course, the council gave us direct direction as to how long that exemption would last, right? And then we would check it at that point. Like, we don't ask you every year whether the Club Acadien should get an exemption, if you know what I mean. So you don't have to make a permanent decision on this if you don't want to. I sense that you want to do an exemption, which is, of course, something you can do. So the motion can give us direction how long and when to review it, if you wish. If not, what staff will do is assume that decision is the same until you tell us otherwise.
Well, as long as they stay not-for-profit, then it should be good, right?
As long as they stay not-for-profit, there will be no reason for staff to bring you a decision in the future on this unless you told us to. So if you say, for example, if your motion says exemption 100% for 5 years, we're going to come back to you in 5 years and we're going to ask you the same question. If you say, please add them as 100% exemption on the list, we will not come back and ask you. We will show you the list once a year. And if you want to re-raise it, then you do as council. staff will not make a recommendation to take them off the list.
All right. Yeah. Great. Well, I'll make a motion that we, I guess what I was looking for was their new name. So I'll make a motion that we, the West Pubnico Golf Club Association, that we add them to the list of tax exemption properties in the municipality district, and that's full exemption. Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Very good. You have a mover and a seconder. Any other discussion or comments?
So now that we have a motion on the floor, just a couple of clarifying things. As staff, we will seek to prove that they are in fact a nonprofit organization, because that's what we do. You don't have to put that in the motion. We will do that as part of the motion. And number two, your budget already contemplates this decision. Okay, so the question that counts, that Warden Muse asked, like, where is this on the budget? We have included this full exemption in the budget. We included, like, I won't call it the worst case scenario because it's great news for if it's voted affirmatively, but it is the worst case financial scenario from our budget standpoint. So it's already included.
Yeah.
For my part, I've always said that if they could be ever come non-profit, it would certainly fit the criteria that I've always looked for. And you know what, like everybody that spoke here, it's a great organization. They work very hard, and they're an asset to our community. I'm 100% behind the mover and seconder. Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Negative minded, left hand. Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is the community litter cleanup policy. And I was, we have an attachment with 8 pages. And that's the community litter cleanup program. So this is just the policy that this is something that we don't approve every year. There's been a few changes to it. Has there been? I've read it, but is this the same as before, and we approve it every year?
This is moving the annual program to a policy. So we used to have a program every year that we would approve every year. This policy sets it in policy. So it probably could have been done years ago. We're cleaning it up now, and I would recommend you've received this, I believe, a week. You've had your week's notice on this. Quite sure, right, Lori?
Yes, they have.
Excellent. So you are able to vote in the affirmative, or obviously, if you're not ready for that, you can either ask for changes or deny it. I will say that in the budget that we have put in, we've included the full $22,000, even if we didn't do a spring cleanup. And the reason why is if the earth reopens in the fall, it gives you the opportunity to choose whether or not you want to do a full cleanup then, or you want to choose to do only the fall one to save money. You'll have more information at that point, but we wanted to make sure your budget anticipated a full cleanup this year.
Very good, Alain. Thank you for that info. Would there be any questions or comments, or a motion? Would be in order if not. It's moved by Kathy, worked in council, and moved by and seconded by Councillor Digdon. Any comments? And that motion is for the community litter cleanup program for policy. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Negative minded left hand. Motion carried. Okay, next item is the EV charging station. And we do have funding request, and we do have an attachment to that one. And I'll just move it quickly. So apparently Nova Scotia Power has sent out letters to the municipalities that they will entertain municipalities applying to install the charging stations, EV stations in their municipality. The program will cover up to 50% of charging station infrastructure costs. Each charging station is approximately $7 to 8,000 installed. The application is due in June, by June 11th of 2020, and funding decisions will be made by October. And then we understand that during the current pandemic, there is much economic uncertainty. However, successful applicants will have until April 2022 to install and commission the chargers. This initiative would qualify for your carbon reduction initiative set up by the FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We are asking all towns and municipalities to please respond with an expression of interest in this program by May the 4th. Oh, yes, Danny, Warden Muse, please.
So what do we have now for stations? Do we have any stations? Is there in the municipality?
Certainly none endorsed, but none that we've paid for. I don't think we do. There was a time we tried to get some, but
okay,
I could be mistaken. It could be.
There is one.
Tuscan Ford.
Tuscan Ford. That's right. Tuscan Ford has one. That's right. I forgot.
But it's theirs. It's not.
It's theirs.
It's theirs. So if there's one in Tuscan, and we went with this program, would we go with maybe? How many would we go with? Like, is that something that we would have one in Pubnico and where else? You know, like we'd have to decide how many we want, I guess, and pick the best spot to have it. So I'm just wondering, you know, how we would decide that and how many we would need.
Councillor CAO Muse, would you?
We entertained this at one point, and then the company that was doing this, like, out of business or something, like they promised. I think they over.
SUN, Sun Valley.
That's right. So, I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want to duplicate anything in Tuscan if it was already in Tuscan. You could decide to have it in Wedgeport and West Pubnico, which are your three centers in accordance with your land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy. You've identified those communities as being like kind of like the holy trinity of communities, not to exclude other communities, but they're treated a little differently just based on population and centrality. So you could certainly consider that, or you could consider it to do nothing, not get involved in it at all. We did make a quick request to see how it would work if we had it at our municipal building because we're net zero, right? The answer I got from the architects is that it may actually have an impact on our obviously that hasn't been factored into the solar power. So I don't see that as being significant, but you should be aware that, you know, whatever energy that is required when we charge in that way was not contemplated in our net zero situation. So it might actually result in us being net a little bit more than zero. But I couldn't tell you that until I would know any sort of demand.
Okay, I'd like to make a comment, and Kathy, I'll get right to you. Number one, there's two different types of stations for sure. One that you'll charge, it might take 7 or 8 hours, and another one you could charge in 20 minutes. So you'd have to contemplate what that is. Also, I would caution you to check with the one at Tuscan Sales if they are willing to let somebody go there. That's a private enterprise. And is it a 20-minute one? Is it just an 8-hour one? I would caution you to check those two things out first. Yes, Councillor Bork.
Well, that was a question. I was like, what kind of a charger did they have there? If they already have one up in the Tuscan area, I think another area, you sort of want to spread them out. And how much are they being used as well? I mean, is it something that's being used quite a bit? That's something else maybe we have to find out. One in Pubnico Head, I thought would be nice to have one there. It's right off the highway, and if anybody had to stop and charge their vehicle, I think that would be a good spot.
So I guess the reason why I put it on the agenda was to understand whether this is something of interest to council. Like, is this something that you want to contemplate, right? Because it looks like it's 50-cent dollars. It looks like also you don't have to do it right away, but you do have to put in an expression of interest. So a lot of the, like, you know, in terms of the details associated with the EV, I don't have a lot of those details right now. If you're interested in putting in an expression of interest, then what would happen is staff would then put the time and energy in to understand what all this looks like and the potential locations. I know we did work on this before, and we had identified places that, you know, that are highly visible and that, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you know, whether it was, you know, municipally owned or et cetera, like maybe fire departments are a good place, et cetera, et cetera. We went through this whole process back in the day. I'd have to refresh that information for you. And obviously it may have changed since. So really, I'm just looking to see if this is something of interest to you, or whether you just, you know, this is not a priority right now, pass and maybe wait till the next time. And that's really the purpose of putting it here.
Councillor Dignan?
The biggest concern I have on this, and I could be wrong, I could be reading it wrong, but here we have a company like Emera asking us to cost share in putting in this charging unit, that they are going to collect the money on it, on the power that's sold to consumers. And I know when our garage is around putting new tanks or new hoses or nothing like that, we don't help them out any by what they have to go through as far as expenses. And as far as I'm concerned, if Emera feels as though they'd like to have a charging unit set up, and whether it be Wedgeport or Pubnico or Barrington, they're a big company. They're doing well on the power they sell, and by all means, try and hit up an agreement with some business down there that they'd like to put a charging unit in and go with it on their own dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dignan. Councillor Donaldson had his hand up. Councillor Donaldson, anything you'd like to comment on or question? I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, I think at this point we should just drop it. I don't think there's the public interest out there, and Glenn's argument reinforces that it's for profit from a power company. I just don't think, I've never heard one word. If there is any electric cars, most people have a station at their home. So I don't think it's something we should be entertaining at this time, especially with everything else going on. That's my opinion.
Right.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I can share something with you. One car used it at Duskett Ford between February and March. That I know for a fact. I was talking to Marcel. Yeah.
Did it take that long to charge that one car? Or
2 months. 2 months. The power was slow in Duskett.
Just like cell phone service.
You're right.
Yeah, and you know, even if you were interested, there's no guarantee that you would actually get because it's an expression of interest and it's competitive, right? So there would be, even if you were interested, which I'm gathering you may not be, but even if you were, there's no guarantee that you would obtain that kind of support either.
Okay, if council
From you.
seems to be okay with that, then we'll just move on to the next item. Yeah, okay, we'll go to the rural internet. And I'll read what's on the attachment. The request for letter of support and funding broadband internet services. And this is through the, to get broadband to Lower Argyle, Central Argyle, Argyle Head, and civic address 1 to 379, or 379 civic addresses, and 379 civic addresses in Argyle, 166 civic addresses in Kemp, East Kemp, and North Kemp. Did Danny ask if that was East Kemp responsible for East Kemp? I'll let you, can you answer that? I saw Danny has a question.
The information I have is that the cost associated with the request only relates to East Kentville properties. I would like to confirm that with Alex, because Alex knows Civic like the back of his hand. So it may be that the REN relied on Alex. I just haven't had the occasion to circle back and confirm with Alex. But it is confirmed by the REN that what you see in front of you is the cost for East Kent and the Argyles only, because the CRTC application also includes communities that are not in our jurisdiction, like Kent and North Kent.
Thank you, Alain. Yes, Danny, go ahead.
I would definitely check with Alex for the 166, because that sounds high for that area, for me anyway. I'm not sure.
I share your concern.
Yeah, I find it's high. I was going to go on NASCAP just to kind of do it quick myself, but probably Alex can do that quite quickly anyway. Like, but I just find that high for East Kent. Knowing when you look at the voters list, okay, I don't think there's 166 voters, which means you have 2 per household usually. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of threw me when I saw that number, for sure.
I share your concern, Warden. I convinced myself that perhaps the number included seasonal dwelling, which would not be on the voters list as a permanent.
Okay.
But that may be just me convincing myself. You know, Alex has the answer. What I can assure you is that we will be paying for civic addresses in East Kent and not North Kent.
For sure.
We will only be paying for those that relate directly to our.
Yes.
Councillor Donaldson?
Thank you. Mute points, it can be sorted out later. Let's get that lettering. I move that the municipality support Bell's request for a letter of support and funding support for the CRTC application for federal funding for rural internet upgrades to Lower Argyle, Central Argyle Hit, and East Kent. Finally, after years, I get to read something like that.
I'll
How far it will go, but it's step 1.
I'd like to second that.
second that. Okay.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Very good. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Negative minded left hand. Richard, we couldn't miss your hand. Motion carried. Okay, moving to correspondence and for information, the airport annual report. There's 3 pages attachment and then another attachment of 3 pages. That is for information and correspondence, unless somebody has a question or concern with that. I'll give you a chance maybe to express anything you want on that. If not, we'll move on to the blue bag recycling. We have attachment 5 pages, attachment 2 pages on that. Any questions on that? Comments? If not, we'll move on to financial requests. Any financial requests? No, that's right. That'll be for next meeting. Number 15, agenda topics for next meeting or notice of motion from councillors. Alain, do you have anything that you can see from anybody on Facebook?
No questions.
Move to adjourn.
We have a question period. I can't see anybody out there, but no questions on that? On your, nothing? Nothing in camera, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by nobody else but Mr. Murphy.